Prince Harry's Invictus game. You follow the royal family very, very closely. What's the latest there?
He's having a lot of issues.
In a stunning royal shakeup, King Charles III has reportedly taken a step no one saw coming, completely shutting Prince Harry and Meghan Markle out of Sandringham. No warnings, no quiet negotiations, just a firm and final decision that's sending shockwaves through royal circles. While some insiders claim it's long overdue, others believe this move signals a deeper fracture behind palace doors. As tensions rise and speculation explodes, one thing is clear. This isn't just another royal dispute, it's a turning point. But do you think this bold move was justified, or has the monarchy gone too far? Share your thoughts below. To help us create more videos and uncover the latest royal drama, please subscribe. Sandringham invitation fallout. Let's begin with what's actually being whispered behind palace doors. According to royal insider Paula Froelich, a quiet but powerful decision has just been made. King Charles has reportedly pulled back any possibility of inviting Prince Harry and Meghan Markle to Sandringham this summer. And the reason? It all traces back to what insiders are now calling their controversial Australia trip. But here's where things start to get interesting. Was there ever a real invitation in the first place? Or was this entire situation something else entirely? Because the way this invite even entered the conversation reveals a pattern that many royal watchers have noticed before. Instead of a private call or a direct conversation between father and son, the message was sent out publicly. Harry casually mentioned to the media that he and Meghan would be open to visiting Sandringham, almost as if he were doing the king a favor. It sounded light, harmless even, but behind that relaxed tone, there may have been something far more strategic at play. Because stepping onto royal grounds as an official guest of the monarch doesn't just mean a family reunion. It comes with something far more valuable: state-funded security, the kind paid for by the British public. And if you've been following this ongoing saga, you already know this has become one of the biggest pressure points in Harry's life. Private protection doesn't come cheap. It costs a fortune. And with their current lifestyle, the financial pressure is no small issue. So suddenly, that casual public statement starts to look a lot less innocent. Was it really about reconnecting with family? Or about unlocking benefits that come with royal status? And then came the emotional layer, the mention of bringing the children. The suggestion that it would be lovely for them to spend time with their grandfather. On the surface, it sounds heartfelt, but to some inside the palace, it raised serious concerns. Because when personal emotions are brought into public negotiations, the line between sincerity and pressure can quickly blur. According to sources close to the inner circle, this wasn't seen as a simple request. It was viewed as calculated. A move designed to corner the king publicly, making refusal look cold or unreasonable. But this time, the response didn't go as expected. The palace didn't bend. In fact, it stood firm. Behind closed doors, opinions appear to have hardened. Some insiders now describe Harry as someone who pushes harder when he doesn't get his way, someone willing to escalate situations rather than step back. And what's even more troubling is the belief that emotional leverage may have been used in ways that left a lasting impression. Because when family becomes part of a strategy, it changes everything. So now the question isn't just about a canceled visit. It's about trust, intentions, and the real story behind recent decisions. What truly happened that made the palace draw such a firm line? And how did everything shift so dramatically after that one trip? We want you to understand why Australia was so significant. Because on the surface it looked like just another one of their tours, photo ops, charity visits, the usual performance, but the trip to Australia was the straw that broke the camel's back. Let's unravel every detail. Royal tour. Crosses the line, but something about this visit didn't sit right, and the reaction from the public made that painfully clear. In a country like Australia, which has long shown warmth toward the royal family, the shift in mood was impossible to ignore. Reports suggested that an overwhelming majority of locals no longer wanted to see Prince Harry and Meghan Markle return. That kind of response isn't just negative. It's a warning sign that something deeper has gone wrong. At first glance, the trip looked polished. There were smiling photos, carefully planned appearances, and moments designed to project compassion. But beneath that surface, a very different story was unfolding. Meghan appeared as a special guest at an exclusive wellness retreat where attendees reportedly paid thousands of dollars just for the experience. Luxury rooms, curated events, and even a chance to be seen with her. Travel, accommodation, everything covered. It raised eyebrows, not because earning money is wrong, but because of how closely it seemed tied to moments that were supposed to be about service. And that's where the tension began to grow. Just days before that high-end appearance, Meghan had visited a hospital, meeting children facing serious illnesses. It should have been a quiet, heartfelt moment. But within hours, details of what she wore, down to the exact outfit, were circulating online, with links guiding people on where to buy it. For many, it didn't feel like coincidence. It felt calculated. Now imagine the optics. Families sitting beside hospital beds, dealing with fear, pain, and uncertainty. And at the same time, the clothes worn during that visit becoming part of an online shopping cycle. To some observers, it crossed a line that shouldn't be crossed. It blurred the boundary between compassion and commerce in a way that felt uncomfortable. Then came another layer: cost. Despite no longer being working royals, security expenses tied to the visit reportedly ran into hundreds of thousands, covered by Australian taxpayers. That added fuel to an already growing frustration. If they were operating as private individuals, why were public funds still part of the picture? Critics didn't hold back. They questioned whether the couple still carried influence or credibility on the global stage. From the United States to the United Kingdom and beyond, there was a growing sense that their brand, once powerful, was losing its impact. What was once seen as bold independence was now, in some circles, viewed as miscalculated overexposure. And perhaps what made it even more striking was how this echoed past warnings. Queen Elizabeth II had once made it clear, trying to mix a life of public service with personal profit would never be easy. It required balance, discipline, and careful judgment. Ignoring that advice, many now argue, may have led directly to moments like this. But just when it seemed like the criticism couldn't get any louder, something else happened. Something far more personal. Something Prince Harry said, unexpected, deeply political, and impossible to ignore, began to surface. And if this backlash was already damaging, what exactly did he say that shattered things even more? Stay glued to your screen. The speech that backfired. Inside the palace, the mood reportedly shifted from concern to something much stronger. When King Charles was briefed on everything unfolding, sources say the reaction wasn't just disappointment, it was deep frustration, even disgust. But that was only the beginning, because while the situation in Australia was already drawing attention for all the wrong reasons, another development was quietly building in the background, one that would push tensions to a whole new level. Just 4 days. That's all the time between two major events that, when placed side by side, raise serious questions. On one side, the king is preparing for a critical state visit to Washington, D.C., a trip so demanding that he had to pause ongoing cancer treatment just to fulfill his duties. On the other side, Prince Harry made a sudden appearance in Ukraine, not for a quiet visit, not for a low-profile show of support, but for something far more visible, a public speech. And not just any speech. Reports suggest it carried political weight, touching on sensitive issues and even criticizing figures within the American leadership, including Donald Trump. Now pause and think about the timing. 4 days before his father, already under physical strain, was scheduled to sit across from the very people being discussed. It's the kind of overlap that doesn't go unnoticed, especially in a world where every word, every move is carefully measured. For many observers, this created a difficult question. Was this simply poor judgment? A lack of awareness about how these actions might collide? Or was it something more deliberate? Because when you step back and look at the pattern, major interviews dropping at sensitive moments, public statements aligning with key royal events, it starts to feel less like coincidence and more like a repeated cycle. And inside the palace, that pattern isn't ignored. In fact, it's something that has reportedly been discussed for years. There's growing concern about the impact of stress, especially on someone already battling serious health issues. Prince William has long been said to emphasize how emotional strain can directly affect recovery and treatment outcomes. Yet time and again, moments like this seem to add pressure at the worst possible times. Imagine the situation from the king's perspective, preparing for a demanding international visit, adjusting medical treatment, managing expectations on a global stage, and then being handed a speech delivered by his own son, one that could complicate delicate diplomatic conversations before they even begin. Whether intentional or not, the effect is the same. Added weight on an already heavy load. And this is where the contradiction becomes impossible to ignore. Publicly, there have been repeated expressions of concern, statements about wanting reconciliation, even emotional interviews about time running out. But when moments like this arise, the actions don't seem to match the words. Instead, they appear to move in the opposite direction, creating more distance rather than closing the gap. But here's where things take an even more serious turn, because beyond the emotional impact and the timing, there's another layer that hasn't been fully explored. One that goes beyond family tension and into far more complex territory. Could there be legal consequences tied to what was said? And more importantly, is this just another step in a much larger problem involving his finances? What really lies beneath the legal aspect of his speech and his financial downfall? And could it reveal a situation far worse than anyone expected? Stay close and let's find out. Pressure behind the image. In the United States, there is a legal concept known as the Logan Act. It is designed to stop private individuals from interfering in official foreign policy decisions or negotiations that belong only to the government. It exists to protect national diplomacy from outside influence. Now, Harry is not a U.S. citizen, which already places his actions in a complicated legal space. But the real concern is not just citizenship. It is the nature of his actions. When a private individual, with no official government position, begins making public political statements aimed at world leaders, especially in sensitive conflict zones like Ukraine, it raises serious questions about boundaries. Because this is where the issue deepens. Critics argue that even if it may not directly break a specific law, it touches the very spirit of what laws like the Logan Act are meant to prevent. Private voices stepping into global political spaces in ways that could blur diplomatic lines or influence international perception. And this leads to another uncomfortable question being asked behind the scenes. Would Harry have even made that Ukraine appearance if things had gone differently in Australia? Because Australia is where the tone changed. What looked like a standard royal-style tour, carefully managed visits, staged photos, charity appearances, and public smiles, did not land the way it was expected to. Instead of strengthening his public image, the reaction reportedly shifted in the opposite direction. Post-tour polling, according to insiders, was described as deeply damaging. The narrative did not improve. It weakened. And that is where analysts believe pressure began to build. Not just external pressure, but internal urgency. A need to stay visible. A need to reset the story being told about him in the public eye. Some observers argue this pattern is consistent. When criticism rises, public appearances increase. When attention drops, high-impact statements follow. And this is where Ukraine enters the picture, raising further questions about timing, intention, and positioning on the global stage. But there are even more unanswered concerns. Who exactly funded the Ukraine trip? What was the official purpose behind it? And did any resources tied to the Invictus Games play a role in facilitating what appeared to some critics like a highly visible personal appearance with political undertones? These questions remain without clear answers, yet they continue to circulate. At the same time, another layer is emerging in the background. Financial pressure, media restructuring, changing alliances within publishing circles. Figures like Dan Wakeford, who once played a role in shaping public narratives around the couple, have shifted positions, moved platforms, and in some cases stepped away entirely from traditional media structures. And as those media support systems change, new claims have surfaced about the reality behind major deals. That the widely reported Netflix agreement was not as large as originally believed. That the Spotify partnership did not reach its expected value. And that long-term inheritance funds, once thought to provide stability, may now be significantly reduced due to ongoing expenses such as security, legal battles, and operational costs estimated in the tens of millions. In the middle of all this, production projects stall. Development deals slow down. Industry insiders quietly suggest that the very name attached to projects can now shift investor confidence in either direction. Now, according to sources, they are still together for now because they depend on each other. She relies on his title, while he relies on her management. Both still need the royal link to stay relevant. Without it, they have little to offer. This raises the bigger question: what should Charles do next? Simply withdrawing Sandringham isn't enough, and public pressure is growing for stronger action. Let's find what the public demand is: the royal family internal pressure. For many observers following the royal conversation, the latest commentary did not feel new. In fact, some even admitted it felt like a repetition of arguments that have been circulating for over a year. The same claims, the same disagreements, the same arguments being reshaped and repeated across different platforms. But what stood out this time was not the discussion itself. It was the tone behind it. There is a growing frustration among some voices who feel that parts of the media landscape have shifted from reporting to positioning. Some argue that certain narratives were shaped carefully for attention or commercial gain, and now that independent voices are emerging, the conversation is becoming more direct, less filtered, and far more uncomfortable for those involved. At the same time, public reaction has become increasingly loud and unified. Across online platforms, one demand keeps appearing again and again: remove them from official royal representation, strip ceremonial titles, and redefine their place in the institution entirely. What many people do not fully realize is that, in constitutional terms, the monarch does hold authority over certain royal styles and titles. These are not always fixed forever. Historically, they have been adjusted, redefined, or removed when required. In earlier eras, monarchs have made sweeping changes to royal structures, with nothing more than a formal decree, reshaping how the monarchy presents itself to the world. This is why some commentators argue that today's situation is not about ability, but about willingness. Because in theory, a monarch could issue clear guidance that separates private activity from official royal identity. That would mean stating explicitly that certain individuals do not represent the crown, and that their actions should not be interpreted as royal approved. On paper, this kind of distinction would immediately change how every public appearance, media deal, or commercial partnership is viewed. It would no longer be symbolic. It would become structural. Tension begins to intensify at this point, as pressure mounts around recent developments. Some analysts believe such a move would significantly strain private ventures tied to royal identity. Every public appearance and commercial agreement would face heightened scrutiny in that scenario. Others argue it creates a clash between personal independence and historical institutions. This raises questions about identity, branding, and authority simultaneously. However, insiders remain uncertain whether such decisive action will actually occur. Some believe the monarch prefers restraint over confrontation and avoids escalation. Critics say this hesitation allows tensions to deepen further over time. Behind closed doors, frustration appears to be increasing among key voices. Repeated controversies and media narratives are seen as a growing pattern. Public speeches abroad are viewed by some as politically sensitive interventions. Others interpret them as personal convictions rather than institutional conflicts. Overall, the situation remains unresolved and continues to attract intense attention globally. Still, the pressure point remains the same, because every new appearance, every statement, and every public move adds another layer to an already complicated relationship between visibility and authority. And that leads directly into the next and most sensitive issue of all: the real reason behind security tensions. What is really driving the protection, the restrictions, and the silent battles happening behind closed doors that no one is fully explaining yet? Stay tuned. The security battle behind the royal rift. And beneath the surface of the Sandringham narrative lies a far more complex and legally sensitive issue: security. What appears publicly as a question of invitations and family access is, according to multiple reports, deeply connected to an ongoing dispute over protection arrangements in the United Kingdom. At the center of this is Prince Harry's long-running legal challenge seeking to restore police protection when he visits the UK, a matter that has already moved through the courts and continues to generate institutional resistance. The core argument from Harry's side is that returning to the UK without official security presents unacceptable personal risk, particularly given his public profile and past military service. However, the counterposition from UK authorities is that his status changed after stepping back as a senior working royal, and therefore the automatic provision of taxpayer-funded protection no longer applies in the same way. This legal and administrative divide has created a persistent deadlock that extends far beyond family relations. What makes this issue more significant is how it directly intersects with royal logistics, including where and how visits like Sandringham can even take place. Security clearance is not just a personal matter. It determines access, timing, and the feasibility of any potential appearance on royal grounds. In that sense, what looks like a withdrawn invitation on the surface may actually reflect deeper structural limitations tied to protection arrangements rather than purely emotional or familial decisions. Analysts also point out that this dispute is not occurring in isolation. It sits at the crossroads of legal precedent, public funding debates, and institutional responsibility. If security is granted, it raises questions about cost and consistency. If it is denied, it raises questions about risk and duty of care. This tension leaves very little room for a simple resolution, as every option carries political, financial, and reputational consequences. At the same time, there is growing discussion about how legal battles of this nature shape public perception of the monarchy itself. While courts handle the technical aspects, the public often interprets the outcome through an emotional lens. Fairness, privilege, accountability, and belonging all become part of the wider narrative. And as this legal and institutional standoff continues to unfold behind closed doors and in court documents, it begins to feed into a much larger question about how the public is interpreting every new development on both sides of the Atlantic, and whether this is quietly reshaping the entire royal narrative in ways that go far beyond security, family ties, or even tradition itself. And now there is a declining popularity of Harry and Meghan. But is this shift in public perception truly permanent? Or could one unexpected move completely change how Meghan Markle and Prince Harry are viewed on both sides of the Atlantic? Let's reveal the details. The declining popularity of Harry and Meghan. Public opinion around Prince Harry and Meghan Markle has shown a clear pattern of decline when examined through long-term polling and media analysis. What once began as strong global curiosity and widespread public support has gradually weakened into a more critical and divided perception across both the UK and the US. Polling trends from major outlets such as YouGov consistently reflect this shift, showing that their approval ratings are no longer stable. Instead, they move up and down in response to media exposure, public statements, and high-profile projects. While certain moments still generate sympathy, often tied to their departure from royal duties or personal challenges, these peaks are increasingly short-lived. They are quickly followed by drops in favorability, especially after controversial interviews, documentaries, or public criticism of royal institutions. In the UK, the decline in popularity is more noticeable and often more sustained. Surveys regularly indicate that a significant portion of the public holds a negative or skeptical view, particularly when discussions focus on duty, tradition, and their continued use of royal identity despite stepping back from official roles. In contrast, U.S. audiences show a more mixed response, but even there, the early surge of admiration has softened over time, replaced by more cautious or divided opinions rather than strong support. The key takeaway from these trends is not just fluctuation, but gradual erosion. Analysts note that their public image no longer benefits from the same consistency it once had. Instead, each new appearance tends to reinforce existing divisions rather than rebuild widespread approval. This creates a situation where popularity is not growing. It is repeatedly tested and often weakened by ongoing public scrutiny. As this long-term decline in favorability continues to shape perception on both sides of the Atlantic, it begins to feed into a broader narrative about visibility, relevance, and access within royal spaces. When approval ratings steadily fall across two continents, does it begin to influence not just public perception, but the quiet decisions about who remains close to the heart of royal tradition and who does not? Let's take a look. The symbol of royal belonging and exclusion. Sandringham House is not just another royal residence. It carries a weight of meaning that goes far beyond its walls. For generations, it has stood as one of the most personal and private estates tied to the British monarchy, deeply associated with family tradition, unity, and continuity. Within the public imagination, it is where the royal family steps away from formal duties and enters a more intimate world shaped by long-standing customs and personal reflection. One of its most defining associations is the annual Christmas gathering. For decades, it has been the place where members of the royal family come together away from public duties, media pressure, and official engagements. It represents rare moments of togetherness, where hierarchy softens into family bonds, and tradition becomes personal rather than ceremonial. Because of this, Sandringham is often seen as a symbol of unity rather than authority. Beyond Christmas, the estate also represents the idea of private royal life. Unlike palaces that are heavily tied to state functions, Sandringham is widely viewed as a space where the monarchy can exist as a family rather than an institution. This distinction makes it emotionally significant because it reflects not just royal duty, but shared history, inherited memory, and continuity across generations. That is why any suggestion of being excluded from Sandringham carries a symbolic weight that goes far deeper than a simple missed invitation. It is not just about access to a property, but about access to a space that represents belonging within the inner circle of the monarchy. It becomes a question of emotional distance, trust, and separation from tradition itself. Within that context, Sandringham transforms from a physical location into a powerful symbol of inclusion or exclusion. Being connected to it suggests closeness to the core of the royal family, while being absent from it can be interpreted as emotional and institutional separation. It becomes a quiet marker of where someone stands within the broader structure of royal relationships. This is why discussions around Sandringham often carry more intensity than expected. The estate is not simply about geography or events. It is about identity within the royal framework and what it means to be part of a family that is also an institution. So, what do you think about King Charles' actions and Harry's speech about Trump and his father? Will this act haunt him more? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.